Well, it's lovely to see you guys. My name is Oscar Baechler, and I've been doing Blender stuff for almost 17 years now, I think, just about. About 17 years ago, I got my first job out of college at an indie game studio as an art director, which meant I ran the entire art pipeline. I was the entire art department. And the first thing they said is, well, you go learn Blender. And I did, and I fell in love with it, and I started the Seattle Blender user group based off of that. And since then, I've just gone all over the place, always trying to sing the praises of what I think is the world's greatest software. And I'm here to do that with you guys today. My day job is teaching at Lake Washington Institute of Technology, which is over in Kirkland. You can come hang out there if you want. We have a game program, we have a design program. I also teach in their traditional art departments, doing drawing and painting. So I'm kind of all over the place. If it's anything creative, I've probably taught it and know what to do with it. So yeah, let's just to get started. I want to share a couple of websites that I recommend because when you're first getting into the Blender ecosystem, there's lots of information out there. Where do you go? The first thing you're going to do is go to blender.org. So if you haven't yet, you can go download it here. The other thing you can do is actually install it over Steam. So that's kind of nice because then Steam will auto-update it. But a lot of times I end up with secret, broken builds because I'm trying out the new features. Other things that I recommend are blendernation.com. This is a nice website for daily Blender news. Look at all this cool stuff. Look at all this Blender news. Another one is blenderartists.org. This is a nice forum for a lot of Blender stuff. Another one I would recommend is if you're on social media, such as Blue Sky or Mastodon. I don't know what's on Mastodon these days. Oh, I blocked it because I'm trying to have better social media habits. But anyways, one of the things you can do on social media is usually the hashtag B3D brings up Blender-related content. So if you're a social media enjoyer or sufferer, this is a thing that you can go to. I mean, it's probably not going to work today because I'm doing internet over my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot. But that's what I recommend, B3D. And there's other things. There's all sorts of cool Blender ecosystem stuff out there. This is Polyhaven, where there's CC0 textures and HDRIs. And it's just it's kind of the wonderful thing about the Blender universe is the community. Everyone's out there trying to help each other. Speaking of which, what about my community, the Seattle Blender user group? If you go to meetup.com, we used to be at meetup.com/cbug, but these days we've shacked up with Seattle Indies, which is a like-minded group of individuals who makes indie games. And so if you go to meetup.com/Seattle Indies, this is a place where you can find, if you're in the Seattle area or if you sometimes want to trek down to Seattle, we have various events that we put on here. So we meet on Discord every Thursday night. You can get a link there. And then, oh gosh, I got to get ready for this. Once a month, we meet on the first Saturday of the month at Academy of Interactive Entertainment. Let me see if I can find this. So yeah. Scroll down and eventually, there it is. Hey, look at that. So our next meeting is May 3rd. Yeah, look at that. So we meet at 10 a.m. at Seattle Center. And if you want an entire day full of art and video games and stuff like that, directly after this is the Seattle Indies co-working group in the same building. So you can basically get an 8-hour day out of just sitting in a computer lab looking at software and graphics. Yeah, a little bit more about me, just to get you started. This is my blog. I don't update it enough, but here's some Blender stuff I do. I also have a Gumroad page. You can go to ogbog.gumroad.com. I'm ogbog almost everywhere on the internet. And this is where I sometimes throw my Blender stuff out there for purchase. So this is my big one, Meat Machine. You can generate all the meat you need, guys. This is one I did recently, which was, a lot of this is using geometry nodes, which is way, way advanced. So today's talk is Blender for beginners, right? You guys are all beginners. Any intermediates? Anybody have 10 hours of Blender under their belt? All right, total, maybe one person? Okay. Everyone whisper over there, how do I do this? Yeah, that's great. I love beginners. I think it's one thing that ever since I started the Seattle Blender user group, I've loved the back and forth of it. We always keep it a little casual and a little play it by ear. And we're always going after this idea that you can be an absolute beginner and you're hanging out and you just learn what the hell these buttons do. And you can also be like an expert and show up and just blow everyone away. And so I love just having both of those speeds whenever people hang out and do Blender stuff. And it's kind of nice that you guys are you're all beginners. Everybody's a beginner here. This is so exciting for me. I love this. Sweet. Well, I'm going to try and do 2 speeds today. Number 1 is the beginner speed, and that's really important for you guys. And then every once in a while, I'm just going to have like a 5-minute blast off sprint, and I'll blow you away, okay? Just show you something as cool as possible. One thing I do recommend, you guys all have a laptop. How many of you guys are using trackpads? Boo. I don't allow trackpads in my classes. If you have a mouse, I recommend using it. A 3-button mouse is kind of a vital tool for Blender. It's not totally required, but it's highly recommended. Yeah, this is what you should do, is jack the ones off of these computers. Right? Are we allowed to take these mics? Probably not. The ones that are like on these monitors. If you unplug one of those, just plug it back in when you're done. So yeah, I recommend 3-button mouse. And I usually recommend like Logitech, because like, you know, if you're just buying whatever you find at Fred Meyer, like the Microsoft ones don't have a good click. All right. So everybody ready for Blender for beginners? Total absolute beginners? Can we actually turn off one of the groups of lights? I'm curious if we can get a little better visibility on this. Is that better? Is that too much? Yeah, that's the one. All off? That works for me. So you're in Blender for the first time ever. I'm going to do a couple of things just to like get this started. First off, I'm going to go to Edit Preferences and load Factory Preferences so you guys don't have totally all of my secret stuff going on. I'm going to do a couple other things. Under Interface, I'm going to change this resolution scale to 1.5. That's hopefully a little easier for you guys to see. I'll also change the line width to thick. That's nice. I'm only doing this because I'm presenting. You guys don't have to do this. There's another thing I'm going to do. Blender has all sorts of cool extensions and add-ons that you can get that help with stuff. And you need internet access for it. I just want to turn one add-on on, which is Screencast Keys. This is the little extension that will let me make sure you can see my hotkeys as I use them. And hopefully it's on. There it is. All right. Screencast keys. So now, when I'm doing something like this, you'll just see this little mouse down here. It will kind of tell you some of these hotkeys. Especially if I'm moving fast, you can go back to the recording and hopefully see that. All right. First time ever in Blender. What are we looking at here? So this is the main window that we're going to be playing in today, which is the 3D viewport. You have a couple standard menu things that you might see elsewhere. This is like the global menu for Blender, but every given type of window oftentimes has its own separate sub-menu. So mostly playing here. Down here you have this timeline, and this is for animation. I don't know how much animation we'll do today, but if you pull this up, for instance, you can see where your keyframes are. This is the outliner, and this is just a giant list of all the stuff in your scene. And you can go back and forth between the 3D viewport and this. So I'm left clicking to select things, and I'm left clicking here to select things. And then lastly, this is the properties window. We'll use this one a lot for various things. This is just sort of all the little buttons and doodads that you can turn on and off in Blender. So a lot of times when you're changing specifics about an object, that's where you're going to be digging around. And one last just general note, the Blender way of doing things is oftentimes really, really freaking cool. It just takes a little bit to get used to. One example is that Blender is very hotkey centric, and this is great if you are like an expert power user. It just can be a little daunting to get used to. But one example of how this can affect things is, depending on where my mouse cursor is, that's going to affect the context of what's happening. So if I try and do something like grab this cube, I hit G to move it. Look, I'm moving it. If I'm over here, that's not going to work because the context of my mouse is now over the outliner. I want to make sure we have like a really, really as beginner-friendly as possible experience here today. So I want you guys to feel comfortable just shouting out. Can you rewind that? Or how did you do that? Or how would I do this? Or what was that hotkey? Just shout it out whenever you need, okay? It's totally okay. It's not rude. It's cool. I need to know where you guys have pain points. And if you don't tell me, I don't know how to solve it. All right. One thing that you'll note is that this is just a handful of the windows that you actually have in Blender. All sorts of other things are in Blender, such as geometry nodes, image editor. You can do video editing in Blender. I use Blender as my video editor, not because it's necessarily a good choice, but because I know all the hotkeys. And it's kind of the wonderful thing about Blender is you can kind of just learn this one program, and everything in this program can do everything you need to do. And one thing that's really cool in the open source graphics world is we're increasingly having programs jumping on Blender's success and just assuming that Blender's hotkeys are the default way of doing things.
How did you get that?
This is up here at the top. Any given window is going to have this little pull down, which turns it into a different kind of window. But anyways, all these are kind of their little sub-programs in themselves. So for instance, geometry nodes. If I do this, suddenly this is its own little thing where I'm grabbing things just like I would in a 3D viewport. Anyways, that's speeding up too fast. Yeah. There's oftentimes these like workspaces up here, which are basically presets that you can go to. So a lot of times if you are in a certain workflow like animation or modeling or geometry nodes or lighting or material editing, you'll go through these, and this kind of just gives you the window layout correct for that thing that you're doing. And there's even more that are secret. So if you scroll all the way over, how am I scrolling over, you wonder? All right, we're mostly staying in the 3D viewport for now. That's like the main place you do a lot of stuff, and a lot of the things that we learn are going to cascade down into other workflows. But for now, I want you to try hitting T and N on your keyboards. This is just going to bring up the toolbar and the sidebar. You can go to View Sidebar as well. This is mostly just something I want to have open so that you can understand things are happening to these objects, and you can go in and see what happens to them. By the way, can I get a picture really fast? It's like cool seeing like an entirely full room. Everybody cool with the picture? Yeah. Everybody say Blender. Blender. Cool. Excellent work, guys. All right, let's actually try doing some Blender stuff. I like to teach Blender for beginners from a rule of threes sort of mentality. A lot of the early things that you do just come into groups of three, such as X, Y, Z, or grab scale, or move scale, rotate. The first one we're going to look at is our 3 mouse buttons. 1, 2, 3. Remember I said you have to have 3 mouse, or 3-button mouse. If you don't have a 3-button mouse, like if you're a Mac user, you can go to Edit Preferences, and I think under Input there is a way to like emulate a 3-button mouse, and this will make it so that Alt is the equivalent of middle mouse clicking. But hopefully you have a 3-button mouse. The left mouse button is how you select things. Pretty simple, makes sense. It's also how you say yes to things. So if I'm doing a move right now, left click is going to say execute, and right click is going to say cancel. Right click is, I had mentioned, cancel while you're in a tool. It's also generally something that if you right click, you get this context menu. This is going to be different depending on what you have selected and what mode you're in Blender. So it's always context sensitive. Right now I'm on this object. I have this Mr. Cube, and I right click, and I have object-based things in this menu, such as shade smooth. That's horrible, don't do that. Shade flat. But if I were to switch to this light, for instance, I could right click, and you'll notice there's light-specific things. If I have this camera selected and I right click, I have these camera-specific things. But all over Blender, you have what's known as a modal hotkey workflow. I'm doing one right now, which is I'll hit G on my keyboard. And this is a modal workflow. After hitting G, this is now inside of a tool, and it's going to happen until I say execute or cancel. Questions?
How do you undo?
Control Z.
Control Z. Okay. Z.
Now what you might experience is you're in the tool and you don't realize that you can't exit the tool until you finish it. So it's like when you use a tool in Blender, it's its own sub-program where you're doing stuff until you say, I would like to exit this program. And one of the things that's freaking awesome about Blender, look down here on the bottom of your screen. Anytime you're in a tool, it has one of the most exposed layouts of any program I've ever experienced. I wish, I have to use commercial software in several contexts of my life, and I wish they did something like this. Anytime you're doing something, you can basically just learn Blender by looking at the bottom of your screen. So for instance,
how did you get in the tool? Sorry.
I hit G.
Which tool is G?
G is grab or location. We're going to get into that shortly. But it's a good demo for these things, So like, if you just start pressing these buttons, cool things will happen, man. Like I can hit the Z, and look, I'm on the Z axis. Or what if I type in, I don't know, control. Oh, now I'm snapping to the grid. But most importantly, I'm inside the tool, left click executes, and right click cancels. You can also hit enter to execute and escape to cancel. All right. I'm going back to a fresh Blender scene, because now we're going to talk about the actual mouse button that's most important, which is the middle mouse button. This is why I said you need to get a 3-button mouse. This is your scroll wheel. The scroll wheel is your middle mouse button. And the scroll wheel accounts for all of your movement inside of the 3D viewport. So I want you to try middle mouse clicking and dragging, and you're just going to orbit around this cube. So middle mouse, almost always your movement key. Everyone orbiting? Feeling good? I think if you're on a mouse, if you're on a trackpad, you can use 2 fingers to emulate a middle mouse click. I hate it, but you can do it. There's also this widget up here. A lot of these widgets are actually really handy on a touch screen. Anybody use a touch screen laptop? If I'm doing like something like sculpting with a stylus or doing 2D animation with a stylus, what I love is I can draw over here and I can just click this on the screen to move it. So that's another option if you are without a 3-button mouse, is you can just click here on the sphere and move it around. Even use these as presets. You can click on the magnifying glass to go inward and outward. You can click on the hand to pan. You can click on the camera for camera view. But I don't care about that stuff. I want to go back to middle mouse click. Everybody still middle mouse clicking? Seems simple, but it's really important. This is another beginner thing. Beginners are always like, okay, I'm going to look at this thing. I'm going to use this tool. I'm going to click and drag, and I can't stop until I get it right. Don't do this, guys. What you need to do is use lots of tiny motions in 3D. A lot of this is just like subtle things where you do a tiny amount of movement, and then you do the next bit. This drives people nuts when I work with like clients, because they're always like, can you please stop doing that? But it's like a nervous 3D tick. At some point, everyone just likes zooming around their 3D models with middle mouse click. Okay, I mentioned that rule of threes thing. This is one of 3 major viewport navigations that you're going to do, which is orbit, pan, and zoom. The next one is pan. So I want you to hold shift on your keyboard and pan with middle mouse. Everybody panning? And then the last one is zoom, which is mouse wheel in and out. You can just use your mouse wheel for that. Or you can hold control and middle mouse click. Why would you do that instead of using your middle mouse? Well, you'll notice, like, if your mouse has clicking, like, you might not be able to get precision movements. So sometimes I'll hold control just because I need to go in a little bit. And it really is the most important thing, guys, is just the ability to move around here and feel comfortable in this 3D space. If you played a lot of video games, hopefully that helps out with this. If you have been in other 3D software, hopefully that just helps you with some of these contexts. But you'll always want to just be middle mouse, clicking and dragging, and then shift middle mouse to pan, and control middle mouse to zoom.
How do you shift again? Or what?
Pan, you hold shift while doing that.
Okay.
And if you look down there on the bottom, on that screencast keys, it'll show it to you too. Shift middle mouse, shift middle mouse. Here's another beginner thing that you guys are going to hate. Oh no, where'd my stuff go? Oh no. Where is everything, guys? I hate Blender. This is pain. Please, no. No, where is it? Everything's gone. Ah! What do you do? I had some idea. What?
Centering tool.
Yeah. So one thing you can do is hit, if you have a number pad, the number pad has a number of extra shortcuts for viewport navigation. One is the period key, which will zoom to selected. So I have to have something selected. And if I hit period, hopefully it just goes to it. Hey, there it is. You can either select it in your outliner here and zoom. The other one that I use a lot is 0 on the number pad, which is the camera viewport. And so if my camera was set up to where I want to be looking at stuff, I can go back there and then just pan off of it. And now I'm back in 3D. Another hotkey that's really handy for some of these viewport navigations is the tilde key. You guys know what the tilde key is? It's the little squiggle that's above tab. So when I press the tilde key and hold it, I get this menu where there's all sorts of little shortcuts for my main viewport things that I'm going to do. So I can choose view selected, and now I zoom to that. I can choose right, or left, or top, or front, or back. And obviously these are helpful shortcuts as well. You can just click on this. Another nice thing about the tilde key is, I think if I press Alt tilde, or what is it, Control tilde? No. Shift tilde, yeah. If you press Shift tilde, this actually puts you into a sort of first-person shooter mode where I can orbit, and I can actually use A, S, D, and W to fly around my 3D scene. So while I'm doing this, I can hold Shift and I'll go faster. Oh man, it's like I'm back playing X-Wing versus TIE Fighter 1999. So Shift tilde, you can go into that viewport. The last one I had mentioned was camera, which is a 0. And the camera view is an important thing because, first off, it requires a camera object. If you don't have a camera object, there's no camera viewpoint. But the camera is going to provide the context in Blender for where your scene is going to be rendered from. Now, right now, we're not rendering. We're just in the viewport looking at the things. But let's say you wanted to spit out a movie.
How'd you get there?
0 on the keyboard. Or you can hit tilde and go to view camera by holding tilde down. what else can you do? There's another way you can do this. You can, if you have the sidebar open, no, where is it?
I got mine in some kind of weird mode.
Oh yeah? Did you hit tab? What did you press? Oh, you hit Z on the top. That's fine. We'll get there. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that happen in software where you push a button and you're like, where did I go? Oh no! One thing you might do is accidentally hit tab and you're like, no, Oscar, help me, there's little dots now. Or Z, and you're like, whoops, everything is wireframe. Another one that sucks is if you have like one thing selected and you hit slash. This is isolated mode, which is really handy if you have a very complex composite of a scene and you just want to focus on one thing. And so you hit slash and you're only focusing on that one thing. But usually what happens is you hit slash by accident and then you don't know why you can't see any of your things.
I think I'm still in some kind of weird mode. When I hit 0, it doesn't pop it again.
Numpad 0.
Oh.
Yeah, so number pad and the number line function differently in Blender. But again, that's why I tend to use the tilde key. When they added this, a lot of my frustrations with a number padless keyboard went away. But if you do have a number pad, it's awesome because there's other things you can do. Plus and minus are also zoom in and zoom out. Whee! I'm going to hit slash so I'm not isolating that. And we'll go back to solid mode. You can also press 4 and 6 on a number pad to orbit left and right. You can also press 8 and 2 on a number pad to go up and down. Oops, I hit slash again. 7 is a hotkey for the top view. 1 is a hotkey for the front view. And 3 is a hotkey for the side view, which is mostly important because a lot of times when you're working on something, you need the context from a very specific point. It's like you're modeling against an orthographic of a car, and you look at the car from the side view. You know, 0 on the keyboard I'd mentioned goes to your cube. And yeah, those are the important ones. 5 on the number pad is like hitting this button. It's the same whether you hit 5 on the number pad or this. And that switches between orthographic draw or isometric and 3D. Perspective and 3D. Perspective and orthograph. Same difference. All right. Are you feeling okay? Is this a good speed? You can move around? You know one command ever in Blender, which is G for grab. All right, let's expand on that. So our next rule of 3 is our 3 basic transforms. And again, I'm hitting N to bring up my sidebar, mostly because you guys can see this now. We have location, rotation, and scale, which are important Cartesian coordinate sort of thingies that we're going to do our stuff in. So this cube is at 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and 1, 1, 1. That means it's got nice, clean transform. And that means it's kind of in the direct center of Descartes' Cartesian coordinate plane. Scale, being 1, 1, 1, is different from 0, 0, 0, because what's something multiplied by 1? Itself, that's right. So a cube multiplied by 1 is cube sized. If you did something like S0, you might think, oh, I want a nice clean set of zeros here. But this is bad. That's like a black hole. What's something multiplied by 0? 0. Bad job. I was chatting with Blender friends recently about like my first experience. There was a day where I was just like you guys, and I opened this program and I said, no, I'm closing my screen and I'm never using it again. And, you know, the thing that first made me say, wow, Blender's freaking cool. Again, I come from a Maya background originally, which is the evil commercial closed source program out there. Question?
What's the difference between the scale and the dimensions? Like, how do they affect the behavior?
Dimensions is like if I have let's get a weirder shape here. Let's say we have a monkey. This monkey, if I scale it like this, you could imagine this being like, you know, there's some sort of box around this, and that is the dimensions, but the scale of this object is 1, 1, 1. So like, what if you had something that was naturally like really long. 1:1:1 scale means this is its normal setup, but notice that the dimensions is now drawing a very strange dimensional box around it.
I don't have the dimensions section.
That's fine, because, you know, I never use it. It's really only like an afterthought of this. I do use this like in geometry notes, but that's hard mode. You guys shouldn't do that yet. All right, going back here. Going back to this. Okay, so the first thing that made me say Blender was freaking cool is hitting G on the number pad. Because this is how it works in other software. And you can technically do this in Blender. I'm going to click on this move tool. And here you have these arrows. You guys might have emergently learned this by just pushing buttons on your screen. And thought, oh, I can move this cube now on the Z, or on the green arrow and the red arrow and the blue arrow. And I am here to tell you guys that this sucks. Don't do this. This is what every other software does. And G, S, and R is why Blender is way better. So if the reason that this sucks is, imagine doing this for 12 hours a day. You're going to kill your wrist. I started noticing like 2 weeks into using Blender that like carpal tunnel syndrome got like way better, just because I'm able to use lazy mouse modalities. So by lazy mouse, I mean this. Instead of clicking and dragging for 8 hours a day, imagine I just hit G on the keyboard. And now my cube is moving. When you're clicking on those green or red arrows, you are basically just locking an axis. In Blender, we have 3 axes, which are the red, the green, and the mysterious blue one that's not showing right now. But these represent X, Y, and Z. X being red, green, and blue in order. So X, Y, Z equals RGB. So red is left and right. It's left and right. Green is forward and backwards, and Z is up and down. Depending on other software packages you might use, they'll have different orders for this, but I kind of love Blender's as the default. Oh, G. So when I hit G, I can click to place this with left click, or I can right click to cancel it. But what if I wanted this to not be a gross transform? I could hit G for grab, and Z will lock this to the Z axis. So if I wanted to move this in only one axis, that's all I have to do is GZ. I can also type in a number at this point. I could type in 5, and it will move up exactly 5 units, which is great. I can also do something like, let's say this is a building. I'm going too fast for you. Let's say this is a building, and I don't know where this building is going to go, but I know that it's not going to fly off into space, correct? There's my building. I could hit G for grab and Shift Z. And now what this is doing is operating on every axis except Z. So a lot of times I use Shift Z for things like if I'm rotating something in one way, or scaling in only 2 ways. So now I could place this right over here, and I have nice clean transforms. Another thing that I've started doing a bunch, and you might have secretly saw this hotkey down here. Let's say I want to go back in time. I want to say, no, this is ugly numbers. I don't like this. I can hit Alt-G, and it will clear it out. And this is going to cascade to the other hotkeys that we're going to see. R for rotate, Alt-R clears out your rotation. S for scale, Alt-S clears out your scale. Here's another thing that's cool about Blender. Let's give this real horrible numbers. This is a mess now, right? A couple cool things. Number one, I wish every single program in the world did this. I can actually do hover, copy, and paste in Blender. So this number is 5.5993. Who cares? But I can just have my cursor over this and hit Control-C, and it copies it to the clipboard without me having to click into a field. Again, anti-clicks. Yeah, it's amazing. You can do stuff like copy and paste color values too. Also, if I hover over any field in Blender and I hit backspace, it will go back to the default. This is another thing that's cool is you can do like basic math in this. So I can say like, 4 times pi, and it'll do 4 times pi worth of distance. I remember like bragging about this for years, and then like finally in like 2020, Adobe was like, look, you can do basic math in Photoshop fields now. Way to go, Adobe. 10 years late. Welcome to Cbug, where we just bash other programs. All right, so back to a nice clean cube. G for grab. I can also hold G and control, and this is going to snap. This turns on snapping. Now, I'm not looking at this from any particular direction, so it's going to be a little wrong. But I could choose something like Shift Z now, and now when I hold snap, I can place this anywhere on my little Minecraft grid, except on the Z. There's other kinds of snaps. This is the snap menu up here, and you'll see that the default in Blender is grid snap. But I could also choose, I don't know, or no, increment snap is the default. But there's also like vertex, edge, and face, and you know, we'll mess with those later maybe, or not. I don't know. Okay, so G for grab. Alt G to clear out your grab. Let's do the next one. R for rotation. Whee! Note that my cursor is important here. This is especially important if like you're scaling. The context that you're getting with this like tool interface is the distance from your object. So when I hit S right now, if I hit S or R or G right over here, a lot of times this causes problems because it's so close to the cube that I'm not really sure if I'm going negative or positive. So it can very easily accidentally scale into negative. So just note that when you're doing this stuff, a lot of times you sort of want your mouse in this comfy like Goldilocks zone of like 30% to 70% around whatever you're going to do. So if I hit R, I'm rotating. And just like with grab, I can left click to place it. I can hit right click to cancel. And I can hit Alt R to clear my rotation out.
When I hit R, I just get the cursor, but it doesn't move.
Let me see. Put it out, new file. Make new files all the time when you're starting out in graphics. So one other rotation thing. I'm going to hit R, and you might be able to cheat and look down here and find these things. There's all these extra things. But there's still an R here for trackball. So if I hit R again, I can switch between turntable and trackball. So you can just toggle R over and over. This is trackball, this is turntable. So turntable goes directly around the outside. Trackball is sort of like aiming it. When do you use these? If I'm doing like character animation, a lot of times trackball is how I would want to do something like position my arm. And just like with grab or move, you can hit R and then type in an axis and a specific number. So I can type in R, Z, and 45. And note that this gave me this nice, clean 45-degree rotation. I wanted you to hit R and rotate your cube into a weird direction, specifically to show another aspect of grab. So we're going back to grab, which is the same as move, which is the same as location, which is the same as translation or position. There's all these words that kind of mean the same thing. So with your cube rotated in a weird place, hit G again, and hit Z again, and now hit Z a second time. So what I've done is I've locked the axis to the local rotation of this cube. And now it's like a rocket ship that's pointing in the correct direction. Whee! Make sense? Feel good?
broke mine.
That's good.
How did you lock it to the local location?
It's you type the axis twice. And I can actually do this with the z-axis too, or with the rotation. So I'll hit R for rotate, Z for z-axis. You'll note that it's rotating on the global z. And I hit Z one more time, and now I'm rotating only on the local z-axis. What'd you do? What happened?
Oh, you just clicked on the cube.
Yeah, you just didn't have anything selected.
Okay.
When you did the rotation, what were the two options again? There was the trackball and the other.
Trackball and turntable.
How do I use this with puzzle too?
You just hit R twice.
Oh,
You can just hit R over and over, and it'll switch between them. There's also nothing wrong with clicking on the rotate tool over here. I just hate it.
okay.
I mean, you know, it's not the Blender way of doing things.
I can see why that's going really fast.
Yeah, I mean, like, everywhere else uses gizmos, and it's like, once you've like gotten used to this, it's like gizmos just seem like so pathetic.
I forgot. How do you make it so that way it's like a nice even number with no decimal?
Oh, you just type it in. RZ45. GZ1. You can also use snap. Snap might have been the thing you were looking at. If I hit R, Z, and I hold control, now it's increment snapping. So control is what I'm holding while inside of this tool. Again, I'm inside the tool. The tool is like its own sub-program. And in that program, I can do all sorts of fun tool-based things, like get it exactly 45 degrees. And then I exit the tool. This is another like important like physical aspect of using these programs, and I want you to focus on this. When you do software stuff, a lot of the time the problem I see with students is they've got their mouse here, and their keyboard here, and their other hand is over here, or doing something like this. All over the place, you're going to be using qualifier hotkeys in pretty much every graphic software out there. So I always encourage people to keep one hand on Alt, Control, Shift at all times, because all the time you're inside of a tool, and pushing one of those or multiples of those changes what you're doing entirely. I actually believe in emergent learning, where you go into any software and you just do something, and you immediately try holding Control or Alt or Shift just to see what happens. So for instance, Alt doesn't really do anything when I'm grabbing, but Shift actually switches this to soft movement. So now it's slow movement. How did I learn that? I just pushed the buttons. Of course, that's not something you always want to do, but I kind of love it.
Save frequently. Control Z is your friend too.
Yeah, that's true. We should save. I mean, I'm just operating on this basic file. Actually, there's a great Blender add-on under Edit Preferences. This is made by Siprin Stuvel, one of the head honchos at Blender. If you go to Get Extensions, I think it's UR Autosave. And what this will do is it'll slowly make my interface red the longer I've gone without saving, until eventually, like, you know, I have to feel the guilt and I have to save.
I have a silly question. Is there a way to tell what the modifier is? Is it documented somewhere on the screen?
Yeah, if I'm hitting
I'm
G,
sure you said it, I just
down here on the bottom, all these are little things that you can do.
okay. Awesome.
And then lastly, scale. S for scale. Again, same stuff. SZ, we'll scale it on only the Z-axis. If it's rotated weird, SZZ will make it only go on the local Z-axis. S and Control will make it snap. You'll notice that now my scale is always a decimal. That's only one in length. Any other questions off the top of your heads right now? Yeah, question?
How do you change
The snap?
The scale of the snap?
I think down here there's the rotation amount. I think there's a place you do it. I can change the scale of the floor. And you'll note now it's snapping to units of 2. Question?
How do you do
Light?
Yeah.
Ah. A render enjoyer, I see. Let's talk about that. So we have this default scene, and there's all these buttons. I mean, we're overwhelmed. There's so many buttons. But let's talk about how we actually visualize what we're looking at here. Up here at the top, there's a couple of viewport display things that are worth noting. These are the ones that are the main render modes. And these, again, this is not actually rendering. It's just different viewport display options. This first one is wireframe. That's what you accidentally clicked earlier. The next one is solid, and that's the one that Blender starts off by default. The next one is viewport shading. This one lets you visualize your materials, but it doesn't do a full-on rendering. It's not going to calculate lights. So it's more like for material design. And then lastly, this one is rendered mode. So right over here is rendered. Is that making sense? Right up here. There's also a little pull down that you can click on that has all sorts of information about whatever mode you're on. So if I change to material mode, I can choose what kind of stuff I want. If I'm on solid mode, I can change how I view this with various options here. There's a hotkey for this, which is Z. So if you hit Z, you get the shading menu. And I can rapidly choose wireframe or solid or material preview. I strongly encourage you guys to use stock Blender, especially as you get started. Of course, as you get more comfortable, I encourage you to go nuts and install everything weird that makes Blender truly your own. But I oftentimes go back to stock Blender because I know that that's the people I'm showing Blender to, and also I don't know. I can go crazy installing way too many things sometimes. But the one thing I do turn on almost always, just as like a necessity for me, is under key map, I turn on extra shading pie menus. I usually turn this stuff on too, but extra shading pie menus I love just for this specific thing, which is this will give you 2 other commands. One is toggle overlays, which is the same as clicking here. Overlays are all the visual clues about how your scene works. So, the object, locations, or names, or like whether you see the grid and stuff that is not actually part of the scene, but is important for understanding the context of what you're looking at in your scene. So you can click this to turn that on and off. And the other one is X-ray mode, which is handy when you have like multiple objects and you're like trying to look behind something. So this is called a pie menu in Blender, and we use them pretty frequently. So for instance, when I hit tilde, that was a view pie menu. And pie menus can operate in a couple of contexts. One is I can just hit tilde to get this menu up, and I can just click on the thing I want. Or alternatively, as you get used to where these are, you can actually use them really fast by like pressing tilde and drawing towards that option at the same time.
You also have a numpad shortcut too. If you start the pie menu, it has a number next to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can do that. Actually, most things in Blender do something like that. So like, I think of, this is not necessarily a great example, but if I'm in edit mode, which we'll get to later, and I hit delete, these are actually linked to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so you can type in that number and it will do the command. There's also the underlined letters here. So V, E, F, O, and D. So if you hit X in edit mode to delete, you can actually follow that up by pressing the keyboard thing here. It really is dependent on like whether you prefer hotkeys versus your mouse. And yeah. Oh man, I forgot the most important hotkey of all, guys. F3. I'm gonna press F3. F3 is the search menu in Blender, and I love this because you can kind of just try words out and probably something works. Like, I don't know, let's search bevel. Is that a thing? Oh, I think I have to be in edit mode now. Or here, let's type in cube. Hey, look, there's a menu for a cube. And now here's my cube. I have another cube. What about delete? Delete. Look, delete stuff. This is another thing I just love everywhere in Blender. Blender is always exposing the hotkeys. Another menu that we're going to look at now is the add menu. So we've mostly just looked at this single cube, but if you hit Shift A, this brings up the add menu, which is the same as clicking on add up there. And these are all the different objects that we can add to a Blender scene. I would mostly have you guys using mesh objects today, but there's all these other ones that you can dig around in later. Curve objects are like splines, and they're really fun. They're my favorite. Surfaces I never use. Metaballs I never use. I mean, they're fun just to learn about, but then they don't really have a lot of production uses. Text objects, give you text. Grease pencil is the 2D animation option in Blender, which is really cool. Armatures are how you make something that can move a character around. And going back to your question, how do we view our lights? We want to hold Z and go to rendered view. And this is going to show us how our light operates on our object.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I see you have to adjust the light power, but I don't see the light is on or off.
It's always on.
What you need to be is in rendered mode, which is this little button here. Or if you hit Z on your keyboard, you can switch your viewport shading menu to rendered there.
How did you move the light again?
Same way I moved the cube. I hit G. Whee! GSR all the way down, man.
So that ball is the light source.
Yeah.
It's like the sun is on.
It's a point light, so it's closer to like a light bulb. But we could add a sun. And then we'll change our render to cycles. And then we'll add a plane. And then we'll make this cube GZ1. And then in edit mode, we'll bevel it just a little bit. And we'll make this made out of glass. Transmission, 100%. Roughness, 0. Base color, let's make it green. And then we'll add a world material, which is the sky texture. Hey, look at me, Mom. I'm a 3D artist. And a cylinder. Let me right click. Let me make it shade smooth. Actually, let's make it shade auto smooth. And then I'll make this metallic. Like I said, you gotta give me like tiny 1-minute sprints where I can go nuts. Let's lower this elevation. We'll make this a nice plastic material. And there's your 3D scene. Oh, and you gotta add a monkey. And set it to shade auto smooth. Whee.
Why the monkey?
This is Suzanne. This is Blender's long-standing 3D mascot.
Like your version of a teacup?
Yeah. I think it's like Tux Racing, or it's like the Linux. This is one of the characters that you can play as. Oh, and let's turn on denoise. Wow, so beautiful. Very render. Okay. Any other questions off the top of your heads? Going back to the basic cube. So that's, for our purposes, we're not really going to go beyond just having this light on. In fact, here's what I would recommend. If you just want to do something to like keep juicing your muscles on this stuff, we're going to get into edit mode shortly. But I recommend try and just build yourself a little scene out of going Shift A to the mesh menu. Just use these basic mesh objects and see if you can construct a little scene for yourself. Maybe it's a town, maybe it's a snowman. Snowman's always fun. Shift A, mesh, UV sphere. I'll move it up with G and Z. I can duplicate it with Shift D and Z. How would I discover duplicate if you don't know that hotkey? Well, I can hit F3 and just search duplicate or linked. Instant. Or I don't know, copy. There's probably something in here. But you can also right click and choose duplicate linked. So this is a great example of the context menu. Right click, duplicate linked. These are things that you might want to do. Just dig around in menus and try them out. I'll hit Shift D one more time. I'm making a little snowman. Snowman are nice for a beginner file. Right click and do some emergent learning. Shade smooth. That sounds like it would be smoother than what we currently have. Let's see if it works. Hey, it did. Shade smooth. I select an object, I right click, shade smooth.
How do you size the shape?
S for scale. But what if I want this to be a little squashier? Z for scale. So all I'm using is G, S, and R. And I'm modifying them with things like R on one axis. So I can make them a little wonky. Now I need a caret mesh. Cone. A cone is a nice caret shape, right? Oh no, this caret doesn't look pointy in the right way. Let's try scaling it on one axis. S, Z, Z. That makes it scale only on the local Z axis. Again, I think of this as like, it's like little meditations. Just use the tools and build up your comfort with them. How about some arms for this guy? S, Shift Z. Is this how I would actually do this? No. But it's important to like try it out if you're a beginner. So there's cube number 1. I'm hitting Shift D to duplicate, and then I'm just positioning it, rotating it, and scaling it. What if oh, this is a nice tool to know. Let's talk about selections. I think a lot of what you do in graphics is a 3-step process. Everything kind of boils down to this 3-step process. Step 1, get the proper view. If you don't have the right context for your selection, you're going to have a bad time. If I'm like this, and I'm trying to select my caret nose, I'm not going to have a good time, because I can't see it, right? If I'm trying to select the snowman and I'm looking at him like this, is this a good way to select any given component? No, because I'm looking at the bottom of this. Get your right view first. Step 1, get the proper view. Middle mouse click all day long. Step 2, get the proper selection. I'm actually making a selection now by shift clicking. Shift click is add to selection, kind of like in browsers. So I can do something like select all of these. You can also click and drag a box. So step 2, get the proper selection. And step 3, do a thing. It's just that. Those are the 3 steps. View, select, and execute. Question?
Can you put it into a group so I don't have to select it with shift all the time?
Yeah. There's a couple ways we could do that. One would probably be to join them into a single object, which is Control J. But I bet if I hit F3 and search join, hey, look, there it is. Or if I right click and I look in my menu, there it is, join. There's always 10 ways to do it. But as you get used to hotkeys, you're probably going to use Control J. So now this is a single mesh object. But let's say you wanted to move this around. Maybe you don't want these as a single thing. Instead, I could use parenting. So I could select all of these, and then I'll select this one last. And you can see that it's the last one in the selection because it has a light orange versus a dark orange color. And I could parent this by using Control P for the parent menu and choose object. And now you can see these relationship lines. I could even go further and select these ones and select this and hit Control P. And now I have one object controlling lots of little objects. I could even go one further and select this arm, shift select this body, Control P, and parent it to that. And now this is controlling that. So parenting hierarchies is another way you can do that. Anyways, I might duplicate this now and just rotate the whole thing. Again, this is not how I would do this. I'm doing so many things that are kind of bad practices, but I think it's really important that you see the wrong way to do it before you learn the right way. What is bad about all these things that I'm doing? Like, if I had to tell me why I don't actually work this way, all of these objects now have like a built-in scale of like crazy numbers. They also are, if you notice there's this little point in the center here, that means it's center point. And obviously like the place I would want that center point for my arm would probably be here, so that it orbits like this rather than orbits from here. So I'm just making a lot of things that I think are kind of normal. It's okay. Beginners are going to do this, and you can't live your whole life worrying about doing it the right way. Just do it, you know. But now I have this hierarchy of parenting, Control P, where technically I could be like, all right, there. Whee.
So if we were doing this the correct way, those centered points would be more like the point that the object rotates around, and you want that against the yarn.
Yeah, plus I'd probably make a snowman generator instead using geometry nodes, which would be like this.
That sounds like a very advanced problem.
Should we do another like 5-minute sprint? 5-minute geometry nodes? Yeah? Yeah, go hard? All right. I'm gonna plug some of my geometry nodes things. I do lots of Blender stuff, but the thing that I tend to sell is geometry nodes, because geometry nodes lets you do some crazy stuff, and it's more like you're generating a tool. And I love this because you guys don't need to know geometry nodes to have a freaking great time with geometry nodes. You can just go find other people's geometry nodes files, and it's like a tool for your production. So this is my baby. This is like an entire talk in its own right, but this is the meat machine, and it makes meat. Ah, yeah, so gross. Here's another one. This is like an example workflow of it. So all this geometry is parametrically generated off of nodes, man. Wow, we're living in the future. 3D modeling is dead. No, that's not true. This is another one that I made. This is a fun example of geometry nodes because this was a student who is in a Maya class, and they said Maya being the commercial software that is still sort of enforced in a lot of places. I don't know if I have audio. But so, you know, the rule is if you're doing your Maya homework in my class, then I get to angrily show you how to do it way better using Blender. So this guy was doing a Blender, like a barrel thing, and I was like, that's dumb. I would never model a barrel. I would make a barrel generator. It's $5. But some of these are free. Anyways, let's make a snowman generator. Goodbye forever, mesh object snowman. First, we're going to use this cube. Sure, why not? Let's go to geometry nodes and click new. This creates a 3D a modifier over here. We haven't gotten to modifiers yet. Anyways, I'm going to start by hitting Shift A and searching. When you hit Shift A, you can immediately just type sphere. UV sphere? Sure. If I Control Shift click on that, you can see it. Oh, yeah, let me see if I can get screencast keys going.
Are these basically the packages sold on websites at Humble Bundle?
Yeah, sometimes people have humble bundles of stuff from geometry nodes.
Or, because I see a lot of Blender add-ons all the time.
Yeah, add-ons are freaking cool. You might have seen like Hard Ops and Box Cutter. That's a big one. This is another website I recommend, which is blendermarket.com. And you can buy all sorts of things. Support your local Blender artists. Look at all these cool things. Yeah, I got a bundle like at Christmas time, and it was like all of their best-selling stuff for I don't know, like $30. It was just a version that would not have long-term support. So you got it as is, and it worked in 4.4, but it might not work in future releases. Anyways, I got this sphere. Let's have this sphere start by moving up one. And I can say, how big do I want this? Or radius. Now this is something that the user can modify. Next we take that and let's actually, let's have that radius go into the scale here instead. And then I can make another one with a join geometry. This one, duplicate. On this one, I'll have it scale down and move up. And I'll do it again. Who's going to stop me? And now I have a snowman. Made out of nodes and math instead of doing it in 3D. I think I have some geometry nodes files I can show you really fast if you want to see other cool stuff. Where did you? Like this is an example of geometry nodes. This is a.
The geometry nodes gives you a composite 3D shape. This is static.
It's a tool that modifies the geometry somehow. So this, for instance, is a tree generator I made. And I can just draw trees wherever I want, right? And after I do that, I can go into the node parameters and I can say things like, let's put some snow on those trees. I can modify the colors, trunk radius, how many branches there are, where the trim is. Do I want them bigger on the top or bottom? Something needs like way more res.
So when you've got a geometry node generated object like this, can you only copy of it as is and then modify the copy like for one-off things, like for example a plane crashing through it or something?
Yeah, anytime I want this to go away, I can just say apply this modifier. Oh, never mind. I have to like right click and convert it to a mesh. And now it's mesh data. Some sort of setting is wrong on this. Anyways, let's get back to beginner stuff, right? Questions?
When you were doing the geometry, you said Shift A to search. Is that different from F3 or?
No, it's the same way as I could do Shift A here and type in cylinder. So search is always available in the add menus. Yeah, searching is cool.
Did we also import pictures of objects that we want to put in our background?
What? That would be a great idea. Let's do it. Let's go here. I probably have an image somewhere around here. How about this? Here's a picture. This is from my concept art and digital painting class, where I made a little Macintosh computer. Remember these? You can like smell that plastic, right? So you can bring an image like that in, and I can be like, here, it's way off in the background.
My fingers hurt just looking at it.
You know, I get it, but what I love about Blender is how often I'm not using my mouse.
Yeah, I'm just looking, remembering to keep those buttons.
Yeah,
They're just so hard on the mouse.
it's something. Oh. Oops, what did I do? Anyways, there you have it. A little diorama. Oops. The island of the Macintosh. Any other questions off the top of your head? More questions? Yeah.
Do you ever blend something and export it in STL format to
Yeah.
3D print?
Are you trying to 3D print?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's do it. In fact, let's see if I can get a cool file. This might not like me if I'm doing it over the network, which is actually my data on my phone. Is the Wi-Fi back yet, by the way?
This thing is never back.
Yeah,
It's
let's
never good.
let's not take the risk.
It's working for me.
Yeah.
All right.
You know,
Maybe
you
I will
put
take the
this
risk.
on. What Wi-Fi network are you connecting to? Or trying to do?
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. It worked. Ooh. Here we are. Here's a big beefy boy. Oh, yeah. Compile those shaders. This is another great example of what I love about the Blender community. This is something I made because somebody in Cbug was like working on a dragon project, and he was like, I'm trying to make a dragon, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, and I don't know how to make dragons. And so I just spun off the rails and made a dragon, and blah, blah, blah. Now look at him. Ooh, he's so big and scary. Rawr. So let's try and 3D print this guy. I'm going to go to solid view, and I'm just going to use matte cap. Oh, not that matte cap. That's a bit aggressive. All right. So, question, will this print? First off, I'm going to save this as a print version. Well, I probably don't need this plane, but we'll get there later. First off, I'm going to join all these things because I want to print them as a single object. So I'm adding these to selection.
Will the colors print as well?
I think there's a way to do that. I've seen people pull it off. These wings probably will not. Like, this is just like super thin. I wouldn't even do that with that. I would probably, I don't know. All right, we'll start with this guy. So I'm hiding this. I'm adding these to selection. And we'll try using the 3D print toolkit. Control J to join all these together. I'm going to hit Alt X. No. I'm going to add a mirror modifier over here. And apply it. So now he's duplicated. Now there's several things that are going to go wrong here. One is this example, which is these are separate chunks of mesh. We should probably cover edit mode before we cover 3D printing. But yeah, all you have to really do is use file export .stl.
Okay.
But the thing I wanted to show is edit preferences. There's extensions for almost every single thing you would ever want to do in Blender, whether you're doing VR or biology stuff or CAD or 3D printing.
Right there.
There we are. I'm just using search and the 3D print toolbox. I haven't used this in a while, so I don't know if it'll work. But theoretically, if I hit N on the and bring up the N panel, the sidebar, you'll notice there's now a tab here that says 3D print. And one of the things you then do is you hit solid, and it's going to find all my non-manifold edges. So if I click this, it now selects those non-manifold edges.
What is a non-manifold?
A non-manifold edge refers to like whether something is watertight. So you can think of like, you know, a 3D Mobius strip. Have you ever seen that? That's an example of something that's non-manifold. It doesn't make sense. It'll break your brain. So if I'm like, you know, if this is a 3D cube and I deleted one face of it, I don't know why I'm drawing this and I can just use 3D. If I deleted one face of this, these are infinitely thin planes. And so what I would probably need to do from there is like extrude this so that it actually has thickness. Actually, let's show, don't tell, huh? Add mesh cube. Slash to hide this. So for instance, if I delete one face, this is like interior stuff. And there's actually a command for this. If I hit F3 to search, I can search non-manifold. Oh, did they change the name of it? There we are. Oh, they did change it. Where did it go? Blender updated. Internal faces. Ooh. They changed this command. There it is. Select all by trait now.
So you're basically changing the thickness on lines that have no thickness.
Yeah.
You can select interior faces.
I don't know. But yeah, if I basically there's a way to select it back in the day, and I don't remember where I went.
Part of it is that the faces inside that cube,
Yeah.
they have a direction, an inside and an outside
Yeah.
face. And you know when the slicer to see the inside.
Yeah.
Face on face, but you don't want to do that. You want to always see the outside. So if you're making a cut, you actually want to have it be like, like he's done here, where you actually inset.
Yeah. This has geometry now. Like I can extrude out a single edge, and this is nonsense in the world of actual 3D objects, right? This is a line which is infinitely non-existent geometry, and it doesn't exist until I extrude it out into a plane, which is still infinitely non-existent geometry, which is still not real until I do this. But this is also now nonsense geometry where it's, you know, Kitty Pryde of the X-Men phasing through something. Doesn't make sense, you know? I don't know if that metaphor made sense either.
I think one of the most beautiful things that I've found is to make sure your units are set with multiple units. Because otherwise you're modeling with the size. And you're going to have to scale it to size.
I found a model once that was in inches, and I scaled it to be millimeters, because everything should be millimeters, not inches.
That's true. You can change your unit. We haven't dug into the properties panel yet, but we should definitely cover that. There's all sorts of things there. But under your scene tab on the properties window, there's the unit system and set the metric. So you probably want to type in like 100 or
0.001.
yeah, 1 divided by 100.
Yeah.
And now everything's super tiny.
The main thing I'm figuring out is that it makes your grid crazy size. Is there a way to scale the grid a bit?
Yeah, the grid is up here under viewport overlays.
Ah. If you just change the unit's length from meters, is there another length there?
I don't know.
Down to from where you were?
Length? Oh yeah. Oh, maybe that's what I do. Yeah, that's probably easier. Instead of doing the math yourself, just go over here to length and choose millimeters. What is adaptive? Oh, I got no idea.
You might do it based on whatever objects for our.
Let's see if Blender gives us.
Well, because your objects already have their own sense of scale with them, and adaptive might select one of the presets based on the size of the object.
Yeah, it might be like, you know.
That's a speculation.
But yeah, using the 3D print toolbox, it just like gives you all these things. I like this because if you hit these buttons, it'll make selections of whatever is wrong. So you can choose solid. It says there are no solid problems. Intersections, 2 intersecting faces. Let's see where they are. This is like without the collapsed model. So this is without all that stuff. And this will print pretty easily because I only have like 2 intersecting faces on the whole thing. Where'd it go? So if I use this, I can see these are the problem faces, and somehow I would want to see there was my problem. This point is exactly on that point. And so this face had infinitely no space, and it would cause a 3D print problem. All right, let's get into edit mode. I'm going back to a fresh 3D scene. Everybody hit tab on your keyboard. Whee! I'm hitting it over and over. This switches to edit mode. And you can change your mode at any time by clicking on this thing up here, which is the context of what you're looking at. Edit mode is where we can start getting into the guts of our 3D object and changing around how it works. And yes, we have more hotkeys to memorize. 1, 2, and 3 are edge, vertex, edge, and face. And depending on what you're trying to do, you'll want one of these or the other. So for instance, I just used E for extrude. Extruding with a vertex selected will extrude just a single vert and make that yucky geometry I'd just been showing. With edge mode selected, if I select an edge and extrude it, it extrudes a whole edge. And with the face selected, I can extrude. Do that. But let's start with, I'm actually going to delete the default cube and switch to a monkey. Shift A for mesh, monkey. Note that when you add, you actually have the add menu in edit mode as well, because you might have a single object that is composed of several primitives or mesh chunks at any given time. So make sure that you're creating your object in object mode. And going back to our snowman of things I wouldn't do, really what I would say about the snowman is when I was making all those things and it had those hideous transforms, all I would need to do is instead do it in edit mode. So if I was to make a quick snowman here, which is Z, let's go down. What's nice about this is nice clean transforms. 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. But again, we're dealing with a monkey right now, right? This has a number of extra polygons which will help us to learn about how these things work. Number 1, let's talk about selections, because again, every process is just get the right view, make the right selection, do a thing. You have some extra selection tools now that we're in edit mode. For instance, I can hold shift and add to selection just like we were able to do in object mode. I can control click. So I'm control clicking on this monkey, and it's traveling from the last selected vertex to the next clicked vertex, which is choosing the shortest path. This can cause problems if you're like, I want to have my selection go around this ear. And you're like, well, how do I do that? I can't necessarily control click from there to there because it chose a slightly different path than maybe I wanted. But usually I can do something like that. And now I'm just modifying this ear. You can also alt-click. And alt-click is going to work a little different depending on if you're on vertex, edge, or face mode. What this is doing an edge loop select. And this is just an aspect of geometry that's really important, which is, like if I have a cylinder here and I insert some edge rings, don't worry about that. In 3D, you're always looking for good edge flow, which is the idea that like these edges go that way and these edges go this way. And good edge flow matters for a lot of things. It looks better. It's useful in production for a lot of things. But you'll note that if I click on face mode here, if I click on this edge in face mode, it's able to take that edge and say, go this way and this way, because those are the directions that are perpendicular to this edge I clicked on. Whereas if I click on this one, alt-clicking on this one is doing the opposite direction. So when I alt-click on this one, it says go this way, perpendicular to the edge I clicked on. But if I'm in edge mode, instead it's going to go in the direction that I click on. So if I click on that edge, it says this edge continues in these directions, and therefore that's what we'll do. There's some other selection things that are useful to know, such as Control plus on the number pad will grow your selection. Control minus will shrink it. I think it's search select more.
Control shift.
Yeah.
Control probably in the middle.
I think that's like, you know, one of the rare things that doesn't transfer over from number pad people. I buy all my laptops based on this, by the way. Like any laptop I get, I have to have a number pad on it.
You can also have the docking station kind of set up where you have a real keyboard and mouse when you're playing Blender.
Yeah, and I've seen people who like get like the external, like just a USB or Bluetooth number pad to have on the side. There's a couple other things that change with grab, scale, and rotate. So we're still doing a lot of this. It's just like you make a selection and you hit G, you hit S, and you hit R. These are just the points in space where these are located. So these verts do have this data stored somewhere, but really this is how we interact with it now, which is grab, scale, and rotate. And we're just like being visual artists at this point. But let's just select some plane on this. And I'm going to hit G, Z, Z. I have to change this from here to normal. You can also do double G. So if I select some edge loops, if I hit G, these edges are moving around in space. But if I hit G twice, they will move constrained to the axis. I like using Suzanne. You know, this is like a very old model from Blender history. It's kind of like the Stanford teapot. Yeah, question?
When
you move the various vertices, does that change the origin point of the object?
No. That's why you do it here.
Okay.
One of the most common things I see with beginners is they start changing things in object mode when they should have done it in edit mode, and then you have cascading problems. Question?
In edit mode, can you divide a face by vertices or sub-vertices at
Yeah, let's do it. Let's select this face, and we can right-click and choose Subdivide. Bonk. And now we have a unicorn horn. A lot of what you end up doing is still grab, scale, and rotate. Oh yeah, I was going to mention, like with Suzanne, one of the things that people love about Suzanne is this is actually not a very good model by the standards of 3D stuff. And so there's all sorts of, if you are testing your software or like you're trying to make an extension, it's a great model for like the use case of problems that can show up. So for instance, like the edge loops are oftentimes like real janky. Like this doesn't go all the way around the eye. This mouth doesn't have like a mouth edge loop that goes around. There's also like triangles on this. The eyeballs are separate actually. So if you hit L on your keyboard in edit mode, it will select linked faces underneath your cursor. But if you do that, you'll notice that Suzanne is separate eyes versus the overall mesh. So in edit mode, you're still going to do a lot of grab, scale, and rotate. It's a lot of grab, scale, and rotate everywhere you go. In fact, there's new and exciting ways you can grab, scale, and rotate. So for instance, Alt-S will, instead of scaling, it will do skinny and fat, or shrink fatten. So it's nice if because you can just like do it on a whole character and it instantly makes them like muscular and beefy. But there are some edit mode things that are really handy to know. I think like if I was to show the core ones I want to come away with today, extrude, edge ring subdivide, rip, merge, and some of the other ones. Let's start with extrude. I'm going to select some faces and I'll just hit E for extrude. And this makes polygons go up in space. If I left click, it'll execute. If I right click, it will cancel. And one thing to note is if you right click and cancel, these faces actually still exist. So you'll notice that like it looks like nothing happened. It looks like I said no. But what actually happens is I extruded and then I said leave them exactly where they are. And this is mostly just something I want you to know because a lot of times this is where beginners accidentally create non-manifold geometry problems where they have like those faces right on top of each other. So extrude, let's just give Suzanne some crazy, I don't know, let's just give her some spider legs. We're not making something beautiful right now. We're just trying to learn the tools. So I extrude, I grab, I rotate, I extrude. Another one that you can use is I for inset. So I'll select these two faces and hit I. And what inset does is it's kind of like extrude, but it's more like inside of it. Oh yeah. And now I'm going to start having some manifold problems. Oops. I actually don't like this hotkey. Hit W on your keyboard, and you'll note that you're actually cycling through several selection tools over here. And mostly I just don't like this because it's one of those emergent tools where beginners panic because they don't understand why they suddenly have a circle. So we want to be on the tweak mode. So like now you can see like there's some manifold selection problems for like that and this. All right, I for inset. Sound good? Another good one is Control R. This is loop cut. And loop cut is another example of how Blender tools are oftentimes a sub-program And you enter that program, you do your things with your hotkeys, and then you execute when you're done. So having hit Control R, first I have to choose where I'm putting this edge loop. So it's giving me this yellow icon that says, do you want it here? Do you want it there? Let's put it over here. Then I have a secondary tool. So if I left click to select, I'm actually not done with this. Now I get to say I want this to be positioned upwards or down here. And now when I left click, it'll execute. Another aspect of this being two separate tools inside of each other is if I right click, this edge will go directly in the center. So if you're looking for like real mathematical precision, Control R, insert that edge loop, and then right click and it will go to the direct center.
Is there a way to make it cut right there?
But like break it? Yeah, let's do the rip tool. V for rip. Oh yeah. Oh no, I don't like that. How do I get it back? Well, I can select these two and hit F and it will fill. F for fill, R for rip. And if you hit F with one edge, a lot of times if you have a single edge, Blender can kind of determine the direction you're trying to go with this. This mesh looks silly now. I'm going to delete it. Mesh cylinder. Another aspect of loop cut, Control R, instead of left clicking to start this, I can middle mouse wheel, and this will give me a number of edges that I want to place. So if I want a certain amount of more or less, I can go like that. And now I once again can place them. Ooh, what about beveling? That's a good one. I'm going to Alt click on this because that selects edge loops. And Control B for bevel will start breaking these along that boundary. So probably better than this edge loop. If I was trying to do some like soft modeling for this, a lot of times what I might do is Control R, insert two edge rings. I'll scale them down. I'll scale them with Shift Z. I'll hit Control B for bevel. And now I can use middle mouse wheels to make them softer or harder. Another one that's handy for like that idea of like ripping and merging. Let's hit V. Let's just hit X, and this brings up a delete menu. The delete menu has a lot of extra things in it when you're in edit mode because there's different ways of deleting. Vertex, edge, and face, it's going to delete whatever you have selected. But if you have something like only edges and faces, that's something where you might, for instance, want to have like a waffle grid. Like let's Alt click this to select this. If I hit X and I delete only faces, this will leave those wires in place. But if I delete faces, they go away. But dissolving them will make them delete while leaving the geometry intact and just figuring it out from the neighboring polygons. I don't know if that did anything. There we are. So dissolve faces, didn't delete them, it just made them all into one chunk there. That's why it wasn't letting me do it here, because I want to know how to do it. But I can select 3 of these and dissolve faces. Let me think. Any other edit mode tools that you should know? I think edit mode is really kind of important. Everyone needs to know these things because at some point you'll have problems with your mesh and you need to go and fix them. And another way that you do this is with merge, which is M. So if I hit M for merge, I can merge at the center or by the last selected sometimes. So this is going to merge at the center. And now I have this single point here. But let's say I wanted to merge all of these ones at this center point. If I Alt click on this for this edge ring, and then I select one point here, I can use M And I can merge at the last selected or at the first one selected. And it'll go to that. So a lot of times that's how I like do cleanup stuff, is you just have to get comfortable with the idea of deleting stuff and rebuilding it, and deleting stuff and rebuilding it. How many on time? Got about 20, a little less than 20 minutes, 15 minutes?
Actually, your speed
I think the next
comes
one's
over at
softball
11.
Oh, am I over?
Yeah,
Oh.
you're over.
Why didn't you guys tell me? All right. Oh. Okay. Well, anyways, that's Blender, and I hope you guys had fun. I hope you learned something. And,